You are standing in a glass corridor that shouldn't exist anymore. The lights flicker, red, white, red, in a pattern that means one thing: critical failure. Your hands are shaking as you stare at the terminal screen mounted on the wall in front of you. The screen displays a single line of white text against a black background. Timeline deviation: 94.7%, population delta, minus 6 billion. Your breath stops completely. Your fingers hover over the keyboard, trembling, unable to move. Behind you, the glass corridor stretches into absolute silence. No footsteps, no voices, no distant hum of a living city. You turn slowly and look through the glass wall down into the city observation deck far below. The city is empty. Every street, every elevated platform, every transit pod, perfectly, completely empty. No bodies, no ruins, no signs of war or catastrophe. Just absence. 6 billion people, and they didn't die. They simply never existed. And you are the only one who remembers them. Your name is Kale Duran. You are 31 years old, a level 3 temporal analyst for the Continuum Authority, the most secretive organization in human history. Your job is not to travel through time. Your job is to watch it, to monitor deviations, log anomalies, and report anything larger than a 0.3% timeline variance. You are not a hero. You are a technician. You sit in a chair for 12 hours a day and stare at numbers that almost never change. 3 days ago, your supervisor pulled you into a private briefing room with no windows. She told you that a minor calibration error had corrupted the anchor node, the single fixed point around which all monitored timelines stabilize. She told you it was minor. She told you the fix was simple. Enter the 2031 branch, locate the corrupted data node buried inside the city's central quantum relay, and manually reset the anchor code. A 30-minute job. In and out. She said the deviation risk was less than 0.01%. You believed her. You had no reason not to. You had never caused a deviation larger than 0.004% in 6 years of service. You were careful. You were precise. You were, by every metric, the most reliable analyst in your division. And now 6 billion people no longer exist. And it is because of something you touched. Your legs give out, and you slide down the glass wall until you are sitting on the cold floor of an empty corridor in an empty world. The terminal screen above you continues to blink, awaiting corrective action. You stay on the floor for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. You know the exact time because the corridor clock is still running, one of the few systems still active in a world with no one left to maintain it. Then the terminal produces a second message. Secondary Analyst Kale Duran, corrective window, 47 hours, 12 minutes. You stare at it. You push yourself up from the floor slowly, pressing your palm flat against the cold glass for balance. The system is telling you there is still a window, a narrow gap in the deviation where the timeline is not yet fully locked, where it can still be reversed. You access the terminal with shaking hands and pull up the deviation map. The map shows a branching tree of timelines, most of them collapsed into flat gray lines, dead branches, gone forever. But one thin thread glows faint amber at the far edge of the display. The origin point. The exact moment you touched the relay node 3 days ago, or rather, 3 days ago in a timeline that no longer exists. To fix it, you will need to go back further than any level 3 analyst is authorized to travel. You will need to enter a pre-anchor zone, a section of time so unstable that the authority classified it as permanently off limits 17 years ago. 3 analysts who entered pre-anchor zones never returned. Not because they died, because they ceased to have ever existed. The terminal prompts you for authorization credentials. You type in your level 3 code. Access denied. Pre-anchor travel requires level 6 clearance. You stand completely still for a long moment. Then you type in your supervisor's code, the one you memorized 6 months ago by accident while watching her log a routine report over her shoulder. The screen pauses. Authorization accepted. Departure in 60 seconds. You look down at your hands. You think about the 6 billion people who no longer exist because of what you did. You think about the 3 analysts who went into pre-anchor zones and simply stopped being real. Then you step into the transit pod at the end of the corridor. The door seals behind you with a sound like a held breath. The pre-anchor zone does not look dangerous. That is the first thing that surprises you. You expected chaos, fractured light, impossible geometry, the visual static you were trained to associate with timeline instability. Instead, you arrive in a city that looks almost normal. The year marker on your wrist display reads 2019, 12 years before the moment you corrupted the relay node. The streets have people in them. You stop walking and just stand on a pavement for a full 30 seconds, watching them move. A woman arguing into a phone. 2 children running ahead of a tired parent. An old man feeding birds near a stone fountain. They are real. They exist. They have no idea that in another version of their future, all 6 billion of their descendants were erased by a technician who pressed the wrong sequence inside a quantum relay. You pull out the deviation locator, a small black device that tracks anchor code signatures across timeline layers. It takes 14 seconds to find the corrupted signal. It is coming from a building 4 blocks north, a university research facility that, in 2019, was running some of the earliest quantum entanglement experiments in civilian science. You walk quickly. You keep your head down. You find the building. You find the lab. You find the specific machine that will, 12 years from now, become the relay node you corrupted. And that is when you realize something that makes your stomach drop. The corruption is not from your touch. The code buried in this machine is already wrong. It was wrong before you ever arrived. Someone placed it here deliberately, 12 years before you were ever sent to fix it. Someone set this up to fail and made sure you would be the one holding the reset tool when it did. You spend 6 hours inside that lab. You rebuild the anchor code from base layer architecture, something no level 3 analyst should know how to do. But you do know how to do it, because 3 years ago you found a corrupted training file in the authorities' internal archive and read it out of curiosity, not knowing it was classified above your clearance level. You rewrite 4,300 lines of quantum anchor sequence from memory, line by line, cross-referencing each string against the deviation locator's feedback signal. At hour 5, the locator shifts from red to amber. At hour 6, it shifts to green. Anchor integrity, 99.2%. Corrective action viable. You allow yourself one breath of relief. Then your communicator activates, a channel that should be completely unreachable inside a pre-anchor zone. The voice on the other end is your supervisor. Kale, stop what you are doing. You go very still. The deviation was not an accident, she says, and her voice is perfectly calm. It was a controlled erasure, a sanctioned one. Those 6 billion people, their timeline branch contained a chain of events we could not allow to reach fruition. You stare at the green light on the deviation locator. You were sent to confirm the erasure held, she continues, not to fix it. The reset tool you were given was never meant to repair anything. It was meant to finalize the lock. You look at the 4,300 lines of code you just rebuilt. What you have done in that lab, she says quietly, is unauthorized. And if you complete that sequence, you will be restoring a timeline that the authority has already decided must not exist. The locator reads 99.2%. One more confirmation keystroke, and 6 billion people exist again. Kale, your supervisor says, think very carefully about what you do next. The authority does not lose analysts. It loses people who used to be analysts. The line goes silent. You stand alone in a 2019 university lab with your finger over a confirmation key. On one side, 6 billion people who will live, grow old, love other people, make mistakes, build cities, start wars, end them. Be afraid, be brave, be be real. On the other side, an organization that decided, without their knowledge, that they were an acceptable deletion, and the quiet, certain understanding that if you press this key, you will most likely cease to exist before you ever reach a transit pod. You think about the three analysts who entered pre-anchor zones and never came back. You wonder, for the first time, if they didn't disappear because the zone was unstable. You wonder if they found something they weren't supposed to fix. You press the key. Anchor sequence complete. Timeline restoration. 100%. The world shudders, not visibly, not physically, but in some layer beneath sensation you feel 6 billion threads of existence snap back into place all at once. For a single moment it is the most overwhelming thing you have ever felt. Then your wrist display goes dark. Then the deviation locator goes dark. Then the lights in the lab flicker once and hold steady. And when you look down at your hands, your clearance badge is gone. Not fallen, gone. Your name is no longer in any authority database. Your transit pod access is revoked at the molecular authentication level. You are, by every metric the Continuum Authority uses to define the concept, no longer an analyst. You walk out of the lab into a 2019 street full of people who will never know your name. And you realize, with something that is not quite peace, but is close to it, that this is exactly what winning looks like when the people you beat get to write the records. 6 billion people are alive, and you are the only one who will ever know you saved them.